The rain hadn't stopped all day. It pattered against the cracked window pane like a cruel reminder that winter was closing in. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling as she tried to dial Mark's number again. The phone rang once, twice, and went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Mark, leave a message." The sound of his voice twisted like a knife in her chest. She hung up before the beep. Ethan stirred in his sleep, a small whimper escaping his lips. His little body was curled beneath the threadbare blanket, his brown hair matted against his forehead. Emily brushed the strands away and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Daddy will be home soon." But the words felt hollow. It had been 3 days since Mark disappeared. At first, she thought it was another one of his late-night poker games, the ones that always ended with apologies and empty promises. But when the landlord came pounding at the door that morning, demanding the rent, Emily knew something was different this time. Mark hadn't just gone out, he'd left them. She stared at the table, where a single envelope sat unopened. It was from the bank, another notice. Her stomach turned as she thought of the bills piling up in the drawer, the unpaid electricity, the empty fridge humming like a cruel joke. She rose quietly, her bare feet cold against the linoleum floor. The kitchen smelled faintly of mold and stale coffee. She opened the fridge, half a jar of peanut butter, some wilted lettuce, and a bottle of milk that had turned sour. Her throat tightened. Ethan would wake up hungry soon. She checked her wallet. $3.47. Not enough for milk, not enough for bread. Emily pressed her palms against the counter and closed her eyes, fighting the wave of panic threatening to crush her. "You have to be strong," she told herself. "You can't fall apart now." But the truth was, she'd already been falling for a long time. When Ethan finally woke up, she forced a smile. "Morning, sweetheart." He rubbed his eyes. "Is Daddy home yet?" Her heart ached. "Not yet, honey. He's working late." Ethan nodded sleepily, accepting her lie without question. She spread the last of the peanut butter onto a piece of stale bread and cut it in half. "Here you go, champ," she said, pretending it was a treat. That night, as the rain came harder, Emily bundled Ethan in his coat and held him close. The heater had gone out, and the apartment was turning icy. She thought of her parents, how they'd warned her not to marry Mark, how she'd stopped answering their calls out of pride. She thought of her sister, Lisa, who hadn't spoken to her since that last argument. Maybe they were right about him. Maybe they were right about me. Her phone buzzed suddenly. She lunged for it, heart racing, but it wasn't Mark. It was a message from her employer. "We're sorry, Emily, but we can't keep you on part-time. Times are tough." Her knees gave way. She sank to the floor, her breath catching in her throat. "God, please," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." Ethan's small hand reached for hers. "Mommy," she forced a trembling smile. "It's okay, baby. Mom is just tired." Later that night, when Ethan had fallen asleep again, Emily sat by the window, staring out at the rain. Street lights shimmered on the wet pavement below, where a lone stranger walked by with an umbrella. She thought about how easy it would be to just disappear too, to walk away from the pain, from the fear, from everything. But then she heard Ethan's soft breathing behind her. That sound, steady, innocent, trusting, pulled her back. She wiped her tears and whispered, "Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll find a way." As the clock struck midnight, the last of the candlelight flickered out, leaving the room in darkness. The wind howled outside, and Emily curled up beside her son, holding him close. Somewhere in the city, a phone rang unanswered. And that's when her old life truly ended, quietly, in the dark, without goodbye. The morning came gray and bitterly cold. Emily woke to the sound of dripping water from the leaky roof, a slow, rhythmic tap that reminded her of the passing time she could no longer control. Ethan's breathing was shallow beside her. His skin felt hot. She pressed her hand to his forehead and knew a fever. She dressed him in layers of mismatched clothes and wrapped him in a blanket. Outside, the streets were slick with rain, and a wind that smelled of metal and smoke cut through her thin coat. Her shoes soaked through within minutes, but she kept walking, holding Ethan close, whispering to him that everything would be fine. She walked to the pharmacy first, clutching her few coins in her fist. The pharmacist, an older woman with tired eyes, looked at her with pity when she asked the price of children's fever medicine. Emily counted her coins on the counter, but it wasn't enough. The woman shook her head. Emily smiled faintly, nodded, and left before she could see the sympathy in the woman's face. The rain grew heavier. Each drop felt sharper, colder, as if the sky itself wanted to wash her away. She stumbled toward the bus stop, trying to remember the warmth of her home before everything fell apart. Mark's laughter, the smell of pancakes on Sundays, the way Ethan would cling to his father's leg, it all felt like someone else's life now. Her legs gave out halfway across the intersection. She fell to her knees, clutching Ethan as he whimpered in her arms. Cars honked, people stared, but no one stopped. She tried to rise, but the world spun, her vision blurred. "Hey," a voice said. "Hey, are you okay?" A man knelt beside her, his coat already soaked through. He had kind eyes, steady and calm, and he held out his hand. "Let me help you." Emily tried to speak, but her throat felt tight. "My son," she whispered, "he's sick." The man looked at Ethan, then at her, and without hesitation took off his jacket and wrapped it around the child. "There's a cafe just around the corner. Come with me." She wanted to refuse, to keep her dignity, but she couldn't stand. He helped her up, one arm around her shoulders, steady and careful. The cafe was small, dimly lit, and smelled of coffee and wet clothes. The man guided her to a table near the heater and ordered food before she could protest. Hot soup appeared in front of her, steam curling into the air. She stared at it. 2 days to eat. "Go on," he said softly. "He needs to eat, and so do you." She spooned the soup to Ethan's lips first. He sipped weakly, color slowly returning to his cheeks. The man sat across from them, watching quietly. His face was strong but kind, with lines that spoke of both weariness and compassion. "Thank you," she managed to say. "You didn't have to." "Sure I did," he interrupted. "No one should have to go through this alone." She looked down, embarrassed. "I can't pay you back." He shook his head. "I'm not asking you to." They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the heater filling the quiet between them. When Ethan fell asleep against her shoulder, the man placed an envelope on the table. "There's some money in here," he said. "Just enough to get through the week. Take it." Emily froze. "I can't. It's not charity," he said. "Think of it as a loan if that helps." She wanted to argue, to push it back toward him, but she saw something in his expression that stopped her, not pity, but understanding. He knew what it meant to fall. He knew how hard it was to ask for help. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "My name's Jacob. If you ever need anything, I'll be around." Before she could ask who he really was or why he cared, he was gone, leaving her with a sleeping child, a warm coat, and an envelope that would change everything. For the first time in months, Emily felt something she'd nearly forgotten, a fragile, flickering sense of hope. The week passed in a blur of small miracles and quiet fear. The envelope Jacob had left contained 5 crisp $100 bills, more money than Emily had seen in months. She used it carefully, like it might disappear if she breathed too hard. Medicine for Ethan, groceries. Rent, almost half of it. Each purchase felt both like salvation and shame. She told herself she would find a job before the money ran out. She went from store to store. Her resume crumpled from the rain, her voice hoarse from asking, "Are you hiring?" Each time, the answer was the same, a polite smile, an apologetic shake of the head. The world, it seemed, had no place for a woman with no references and a child in tow. It was a Thursday when Jacob appeared again. She was standing outside the community center, clutching a flyer about part-time cleaning work, when his voice startled her. "You look like you're reading that paper to death." Emily turned, heart skipping. He was dressed in the same dark coat, though this time dry, his expression calm but searching. "You again," she said, smiling despite herself. "Me again," he replied. "How's your boy?" "Better," she said softly. "Thanks to you," Jacob nodded. "I'm glad. Listen, I might have something for you, a job." Her pulse quickened. "A real job, real as it gets," he said, handing her a card. "My foundation helps with community outreach, children's programs, food drives, that sort of thing. We need people who care, people like you." She stared at the card, uncertain. "I don't have experience. I'm not even sure I'm qualified." Jacob smiled faintly. "Experience isn't what I'm looking for. Come by tomorrow morning, we'll talk." The next day, she arrived at the address, a tall glass building that gleamed against the gray sky. Her hands trembled as she stepped inside, the warmth and quiet swallowing her. She expected an interview, maybe some paperwork. Instead, a young woman at the desk led her through a corridor and into a private office. Jacob was there, leaning against the desk. He gestured for her to sit. "I'm glad you came." Emily sat carefully, clutching her purse in her lap. "You said there was a job." "There is," he said slowly, "but before we talk about that, I need to ask you to do something for me." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" He opened a drawer and placed a small, sealed envelope on the desk. "Take this to an address downtown. Hand it to the man who answers the door. That's all." She stared at it. "What's in it?" Jacob hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. "Documents. Nothing illegal," he said, his tone measured. "Just sensitive." A chill crept up her spine. "Why me?" "Because you look like someone people don't notice," he said simply. "And I need someone I can trust." Emily rose slowly, her pulse racing. "I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not doing anything shady. Not for money. Not for anyone." Jacob studied her, then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It wasn't cruel or mocking, just relieved. He picked up the envelope and set it aside. "Good," he said. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." She frowned. "What?" "It was a test," he said. "And you passed." Emily stared at him, unsure if she should be angry or grateful. "You were testing me. I had to be sure," he said. "The foundation works with children, donations, sensitive records. I need people who won't compromise their integrity, no matter how desperate they are." She sank back into the chair, still shaking. "You tricked me." "I did," Jacob admitted quietly. "But you proved something most people wouldn't. You've got a spine, Emily, and that's exactly what I need." He handed her a folder. Inside was a simple contract, an ID badge, and a start date Monday. "Welcome aboard," he said. Emily stared at the papers, her throat tightening. "You're serious?" Completely. When she left the building, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered off wet pavement, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she lifted her face to the sky and smiled. She wasn't saved, not yet, but she had a job, a chance, and for the first time since Mark had disappeared, she didn't feel invisible. The first few weeks at the foundation felt like a dream Emily was afraid to wake from. Every morning, she walked through the tall glass doors, greeted by warm smiles and the quiet hum of purpose. Her job was simple: organizing donations, helping with after-school programs, assisting families who'd lost their footing like she once had. But to her, it felt like redemption. Ethan flourished too. He'd started kindergarten again, coming home each day with stories about new friends and colorful drawings. The shadows under his eyes faded, replaced by laughter that filled their tiny apartment with light. Jacob visited the center often, though he rarely stayed long. When he did, he always found a moment to ask how she was doing. His calm presence steadied her, though she never quite knew what to make of him. He was kind but distant, generous but guarded. Sometimes she caught him watching her with something almost protective in his eyes, something that made her chest ache in a way she didn't want to name. Then one evening, the past came knocking. It was late when she returned home, her arms full of groceries. her feet sore but light. She turned the key in the lock and froze. The door was already open, just slightly, the latch not catching. Her heart pounded as she pushed it wider. Mark sat on the couch, smirking like he'd never left. "Miss me," he said, leaning back, his hands behind his head like he owned the place. Emily's breath caught. "What are you doing here?" "Relax," he said. "I just came to see my family." "You don't have a family anymore." Her voice shook. He laughed, low and bitter. "I see you've been doing well for yourself. Fancy job, new clothes, fresh start. What you do, Em? Find yourself a rich boyfriend to fix your mistakes. Get out." She whispered. He rose, stepping closer. The smell of cheap whiskey clung to him. "Not until we talk. I need some help. Just a little money to get back on my feet. I don't have anything for you." "Don't lie to me." His smile hardened. "I know about your new boss, the one with the fancy cars and the foundation." He leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "Maybe I should pay him a visit. Tell him a few things about your past, about me." Her stomach twisted. "You wouldn't," he smirked. "You think I won't. You owe me, Emily. You'd still be on the street if it weren't for me." That night after he left, Emily sat at the kitchen table long after Ethan had gone to sleep, shaking. She could still feel Mark's voice echoing in her head, the threat behind the words. She wanted to call the police, but what could she say? That the man who abandoned her wanted money, that he knew she was finally standing again, and he wanted to pull her back down. In the morning, she told Jacob everything. He listened without interrupting, his hands clasped loosely on the desk. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. "You did the right thing telling me. I don't want him near my son," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want him near me." Jacob nodded. "You won't have to worry. I know people who can make sure he keeps his distance legally." Emily looked up sharply. "You mean lawyers?" "Lawyers, yes, and a restraining order if necessary." He hesitated, then added more softly, "You're not alone anymore, Emily." Something in his tone made her eyes sting. She nodded, unable to speak. For a while, things were quiet again. Mark didn't return. The days stretched warm and steady, filled with small joys, Ethan's laughter, the sound of the children at the foundation, the way sunlight spilled across her desk in the mornings. Then, one rainy evening, as she was closing the office, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, her heart nearly stopped. Lisa stood there. Her sister's hair was damp, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes hollow. "Hi," Lisa said weakly. "Can I come in?" Emily's first instinct was to shut the door. They hadn't spoken in years, not since that last, brutal argument when Lisa called her foolish for staying with Mark. But seeing her now, soaked and trembling, Emily couldn't turn her away. She opened the door wider. "Come in." Lisa stepped inside, clutching her bag to her chest. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "Everything's gone wrong." Emily stared at her, at the sister she'd once loved and lost, and felt something break loose inside her. "Then you're home," she said softly. That night, as the rain beat against the windows again, Emily watched her sister sleeping on the couch and thought about how far she'd come, and how fragile it all still was. The past wasn't gone, it had simply found its way back to her doorstep. But this time, she wasn't the same woman who'd been left in the dark. This time, she wasn't afraid. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains, casting soft light across the small apartment. The world outside smelled of wet earth and promise after last night's rain. Emily stood by the stove, flipping pancakes while Ethan chattered at the table, his voice bubbling with excitement about a school art project. Lisa sat nearby, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, her eyes tired but softer than Emily remembered. It felt almost normal, that fragile, golden kind of normal that comes after a storm. Work at the foundation had become more than a job. It was a calling. Every day she saw families like hers, mothers clutching children, eyes hollow with fear, and she knew exactly what to say, exactly how to help. Her empathy, once a burden, had become her strength. Jacob noticed. One afternoon, he called her into his office. The sunlight fell across the desk, highlighting the faint smile that always seemed to hover on his lips. "You've done incredible work these past months," he said. "The board's been impressed. I think it's time you took on something more." Emily blinked. "More? I want you to manage the new outreach program, oversee volunteers, handle partnerships. It's a lot of responsibility, but I think you're ready." Her throat tightened. "Jacob, I don't even have a degree. I'm not." He stopped her gently. "You're exactly what these families need. You've lived it. You've earned this." She tried to thank him, but her voice broke. For a moment, she thought he might reach across the desk, and he almost did, his hand halfway there before he pulled it back. His restraint said more than words ever could. When she walked out of his office, promotion letter in hand, she felt taller somehow. Stronger. The weeks that followed were full of movement, meetings, schedules, laughter echoing through the halls. She and Lisa found their rhythm again, rebuilding the fragile bridge between them. Lisa started helping at the foundation part-time, rediscovering purpose of her own. Even Ethan, bright and curious, had begun to draw pictures of Mommy's new office, filled with smiling people and sunshine. Then one evening, as the last volunteers left, Jacob appeared at her door. He looked more tired than usual, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "Your first event as program manager." She smiled. "I'm nervous." "You'll be fine. You always are." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just heavy with something unspoken. "Jacob," she said quietly, "why did you help me that night? You didn't even know me." He leaned against the doorframe, thinking, maybe because I saw someone who refused to give up, even when the world gave her every reason to. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, everything else fell away, the noise, the fear, the memories. There was only understanding. But Emily looked down first, her voice soft. "You've given me so much already. I need to stand on my own now." He nodded, a small, almost proud smile touching his lips. "Then, I guess my job here is done." When he left, she stood in the quiet for a long time, the faint echo of his footsteps fading down the hallway. There was sadness in it, but also peace. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, she sat by the window. The city glowed below, alive and endless. She thought of the woman she'd been, the one sitting in the dark, waiting for a man who would never come home, and she hardly recognized her anymore. Life hadn't given her miracles, it had given her choices, and she'd finally learned to make the right ones. She whispered into the stillness, not as a prayer, but as a promise, asterisk, "We're going to be okay." Asterisk. In the other room, Ethan stirred and mumbled in his sleep. Lisa turned over on the couch, sighing softly. The apartment, once filled with fear, now held warmth. Outside, the rain began again, not harsh this time, but gentle, cleansing. And for the first time in a long, long while, Emily let it fall without fear. Because she wasn't running from the storm anymore, she'd learned to stand in it.